Welcome back to the final episode of the MX Endurance Podcast for 2021. My name is Tim Ford, where we talk about everything that's been happening in the world of endurance sports. Not much lately, to be honest. My name is Tim Ford, and I'm joined by the penultimate legend, the spirit of Christmas, the sexiest voice in triathlon, the sexy shepherdess, James Bale. I added an extra sneaky little nickname for you there, mate. How you going? Merry Christmas.
Yeah, a Merry Christmas, man. We're almost there, aren't we? We're like, what?
Almost.
We're cruising towards a bit of a podcast break, and
We are.
Christmas is on its way. It's beginning to feel a lot like Christmas, in the words of that song. How are you, bro?
I watched the Santa Claus, the Tim Allen movie last night to try to get myself into the Christmas spirit a little bit. I see you're having a Christmas beverage. I actually just had a...
You're not joining me for a Christmas drink on this podcast?
I enjoyed a Negroni just before we started recording, so I can always sip on the dregs and be like,
I don't know what a Negroni is.
What?
What's a Negroni?
A Negroni is... Mate, what are you doing to me? You can tell you are such an uncultured...
A Negroni. I thought you said an Egroni. I thought you'd replaced it with an
I would have thought after 100-odd episodes of doing this with me, you would have understood my accent as if it was your own native tongue. It is hurtful. It is hurtful to hear that is not the case. But James Bale, this podcast is going to be released on Christmas Eve, so it is the Christmas special. That is why for our audio listeners, we are wearing our Christmas getup. I had a Christmas sweater to match you, Jimbo, but it's 30 degrees in Australia, so it was very, very quickly not possible for me to continue wearing that. But we are in the Christmas spirit, mate. It is a special episode of the show this week. It is the annual. The highlight of the year for triathlon, MX Endurance Podcast Awards. These are the awards that we know the professionals want to win. Who cares about the PTO rankings? Who cares about the Challenge Family Bonus? Who cares about world titles? These are the awards that people want to win. We're going to get into them this week, mate. I'm very surprised by a lot of the results, to be honest, the way people voted. But don't forget, we'll get into the nitty gritty of it later. It is ultimately up to us, James Bale, and if people don't like it, tough luck. But we will get into that. But before that, James Bell, this podcast is the official podcast of MX Endurance, the world's premier endurance sports community, created by four-time world champion Chris McCormack. You can listen to it as a podcast like you probably are now, or you can watch us on YouTube. Either way, just search the MX Endurance podcast and you'll find us. James Bell, you've been part of MX for ages, especially at Christmas, mate. What's something that you like about the community?
I don't know, mate. It's the end of the year. I've come up with loads of these.
I mean, you did work on something that we announced today in the community, so maybe you like that part
That's
of MX
true.
Endurance,
Yeah,
for
you're
example.
right. You're right. We are the partners and the tight links we have with the triathlon world. And yes, been working on a deal with Mortan for the last few weeks, and we've now announced it today. All members of MX get a sizable discount on Mortan products from the Mortan website. So shipping all over the world. Have at it.
Yeah, it's good. And I think they're going to give us a whole bunch of product to giveaways, prizes and giveaways and things like that during the year. So it's really exciting. Again, I think probably the most premier brand of endurance, nutrition products at the moment. So yeah, very, very good. I know that a lot of the people, when we announced it today in the community, were very, very happy about it. So a little bit of a Christmas present from James Bale and Tim Ford to the members of MX Endurance, mate.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, it was, and they're a very friendly and open brand as well. They've got a lot coming, and they're working. They've got their tentacles deep in endurance and professional triathlon and professional cycling. So there'll be a lot to come from Mortan over the next year.
They certainly will. Well, let's get into it, James Bale, this Christmas edition of the podcast, this year-ending episode of the podcast. The first piece of news comes from Kevin McKinnon at Triathlon Magazine Canada, one of the best this year. He's done a lot for the podcast. So thank you, Kevin McKinnon, for being such a great source for us. And there's a lot to cover in this one, actually. And that is that World Triathlon is revamping mixed relays and banning clip-on bars in draft legal races from 2023. So I go to the article. Last summer, we saw our first mixed relay event at the Olympics, which was a source of a lot of excitement in the triathlon world, as it provided the sport with a third medal event. Via a press release, we've learned that the order we've become accustomed to for the mixed relay, woman, man, will be changing next year through to the end of 2024. The men will now start the race, and this will be applicable on all levels of events, according to World Triathlon. The first time we will see it in action at major games will be at the Commonwealth Games next summer in Birmingham in the UK. The strategy behind the mixed relay is always an interesting challenge for federations as they look to find a fast women's swimmer to start the race to ensure the team is near the front through the first leg of the race. Now that emphasis will switch over to the men, with teams looking for a woman with a big kick to close out the race. It will certainly be interesting to see how the new rule changes the dynamics of racing over the next 3 years. Now, before we move on to the next one, let's have a bit of a chat about this, and then we'll talk about the clip-on bars.
It's certainly news, and it's interesting, and there is going to be implications of it. When I was reading this article this morning, in my head, I was like, well, what difference is it going to make? I think it's always going to depend on the relative strengths and weaknesses of the swimmers at the front, and whether and over time, sometimes you'll see the men's field more split on the swimming front, and sometimes you'll see the women's field more split on the swimming front. And so I think as things stand, I think you've got a more equal swimming field in the current women's pro field. So I think you'll start to see races tighter and closer together at the start. But as we evolve through the next few years, that might change. But I think that is probably part of the choice behind this, is so that there isn't more of a split in the first leg. What are your thoughts on it?
I think there's a few things. I think that's probably a very good point, because there seems to me, at least in short course racing, there is quite a substantial gap between those front pack swimmers and the middle to back of the pack swimmers. And we've seen that. We saw that in the Olympics this year, where that race split up very, very quickly. I think there's a few points. Number one being, it allows the women to have that moment of actually crossing the line and winning the race, which I think is, that's really great. So the women are going to get a lot more exposure from the event, which is a good thing. The other thing, I not so much about the thought of it, but to me, this almost guarantees Vincent Luis a spot in Paris because of his swim. He's such a good swimmer, especially at that short distance race, and that's what they said. If the start of the race is always about finding that super good swim. I mean, Vince Luis is a very good triathlete, but I saw this. I was like, shit, Vince Luis he's going to be racing Paris. This has got him, like, he's in that team, mate. I reckon. I think it's a good thing. I think I like the idea of it rotating. I like the idea of maybe they allow the teams to choose. It's like you can pick if you're going to have men and women, or how that's going to work.
It would have to be a uniform choice, though, wouldn't it? Almost a vote, because I don't see them ever having it where each team can pick whether it's a man or a woman that starts. Because if you have, I think they'll always have all the men or all the women starting the race.
Maybe for the start, but after that, so maybe the start is women first or men first, and then you can pick it could go the next man, then it could go woman. Like maybe there's some. I'm not sure. I think it's good though. I think
shaking it up is always a good thing.
Yeah, and like I said, I think the main thing is it just gives those. Because again, the moment you always watch is the finish, right? Like that's all the photos from the games are that crossing the finish line, and those moments are. It's been the men, so I think that's a good sort of good thing to rotate. So I'm excited. The next one, Jimbo, same article. So continue from Kevin McKinnon is clip-on bars are now forbidden or will be forbidden. As of 2023, we'll no longer see aero bars on bikes in draft legal races. There were strict rules for on the clip-on bars that were legal for draft legal events, and age group athletes weren't allowed to use them in their drafting races at all. They couldn't extend further than the brake hoods and had to be enclosed at the ends. But one imagines that this still provided some benefits to athletes who spend a lot of time at the front of the pack or on breakaways. Today's press release doesn't provide any insight on why these rules are being changed, but for the most part, one can't imagine there'll be much to complain about by getting rid of clip-on bars. The large groups that we will see out on draft legal courses look more like cycling pelotons than they don't, and it's hard to imagine UCI embracing clip-on bars at any time in the future. Jimbo?
Yeah, I don't like this. I never like seeing advancements in tech being curtailed or banned from races, and I like the fact that triathlon is a bit more open to these things than cycling is. I enjoy the element of the cycle race on the short course where somebody may be on aero bars and somebody may not be on aero bars. I remember when we were watching Taylor Nib race, and she wasn't on aero. Oh no, sorry, not Taylor Nib. Taylor Nib was on aero bars, on the clip-on aero bars. But then we were speaking to Maya as to why she didn't use aero bars, and she said, well, she was found that she would get more of an aero position on her drops, having done a bike fit with her bike. And I like these little intricacies and details and conversation points because I'm a big cycling fan, and I enjoy that.
Second biggest.
Second biggest. So yeah, now
thank you.
Taking
whoa. Don't get too excited, mate. Don't be trying to cut my grass. That's we know I'm the number one cycling fan on this podcast. Thank you very much.
Taking these bars out the race, all right, cool.
Do you think maybe one of the things when they maybe envisioned this was this idea that they were just going to have some little aero bars sitting at the front? But we've seen, like with actual non-drafting racing, those aero bars have been going up, 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 up. So now they are almost like those praying mantis bars. So they're probably a lot longer than they're actually meant to be because of the angle of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I think they look hideous. I hate road bikes with clip-on aero bars. Like I think it's every time I see Tyler with his bloody little clip-on, I'm like, mate, just get them off. That's pure Hubbard mode. Don't be doing that. So from an aesthetic point of view, I'm very happy to see this. But I know what you mean. Like I like that we are able to have that. You know, is it worth the advantage? Is it not? Do they really need to use them and stuff? So I guess we'll find out more. But we've seen some interesting bans happening in not just triathlon but cycling. We saw that the super tuck being removed and now clip-on bars. Things seem to be keep constantly being wound back, and as athletes sort of push those limits, you see them coming the other way a little bit. So
I've had clip-on bars on all of my road bikes because I like them. I like them. I like that. I like the option it gives you when you're riding. Just have a little bit of rest on the aero bars if you need it.
Do you still have them on your new one? Does your fancy road bike have clip-on bars?
It does. It has the my Venge has the S-Works bespoke designed one that goes in and then has a little bubble at the end. But I have the long course version fitted on it because it's what I'll ride when I'm doing Alpe d'Huez next year.
It hurts my soul knowing that gorgeous bike has that hideous monstrosity on the front. When I got one of my old road bikes came with a Garmin mount on the front, and this thing was so big. I was like, ugh, that's hideous. Like I hate it because I like the clean lines and everything. That's why I have an Amonda. But yeah, whatever. I'll be honest. As long as the race is good, I'm probably not even going to notice.
Yeah, that's true. It's true.
Anyway, let's move on to the next article, man. I got this one from Triathlon today from Romy Schoeneveld. Again, a website that we found probably the back half of this year, but have had a number of great sources for us. So thank you, Triathlon today, for this year, for being a great source for us throughout the back half of the year. And this one, I don't know if you've seen this. I was surprised to see this. I didn't see it, but Laura Siddle has criticized the PTO, saying, why have all the board and executive appointments been men? Now, this is a fairly lengthy one, and I tried to cut it out as much as I could, but there's a fair bit that I want to go through with this one. So bear with me, Jimbo.
Mm-hmm.
We are meant to be a new, progressive, leading the way organization, changing the face of sport in a time when equality and diversity is at the forefront. So why have all the PTO board and executive appointments over the past year and longer been men? These are the words of pro triathlete Laura Siddle in a recent Instagram story sharing the latest PTO news about the PTO tour. It's not the first time that the British triathlete shared a critical note. Siddle has already mentioned before that she doesn't feel like the PTO ranking system is completely fair and transparent. She's definitely not the only one that feels that way. But yesterday, it wasn't only the ranking system that Siddle criticised, but also the allocation of a new male board member. The so far missed opportunity to help long-distance triathletes out when it comes to insurance, career, health, business contracts, and more, as she expressed that she hopes the focus stays on long-distance triathlon instead of WTS and middle distance racing. She said, another impressive resume and executive joining the PTO. Whilst it's impressive and super exciting, I'm disappointed that once again it's another male. Yesterday, the PTO welcomed a new member in their board of directors, Peter Hutton, the director of sports partnerships at Meta, the company previously known as Facebook. While his resume is impressive, Siddle is right that women are outnumbered at the highest positions within the PTO. There is only one woman on part of the PTO business board. Siddle also mentioned she hopes the PTO focuses on long-distance triathlon. She said, exciting times for the sport, but also can't wait until we represent the long-course athletes better, not WTS and half-distance again. One of the original reasons why such an organization was needed and set up. The PTO currently gives points for the ranking in non-drafting races that are longer than Olympic distance, as they state on their website. Subject to a race being in good standing with the PTO, any non-drafting race that has a minimum professional prize purse and is greater than that distance will be considered eligible for the world ranking points. This means that PTO compares the performance of athletes racing middle distance, long distance, but also, for instance, the race at Clash Daytona, which was good for 2,000 meters of swim, 80k cycling, and 18 kilometers of running. Although Siddle remains critical about the PTO movement, she's also positive. I think it steps in the right direction and it can also grow. Also, I can't wait to evolve the rankings to be fairer and more realistic to all pros and reflective of performance, and to act on all the areas the PTO is also meant to be focusing on the support of the long course athletes, insurance, career, health, business, contracts, and more. Finally, Siddle writes that she hopes the PTO will fully engage more with the top 20 athletes, even top 40 or 50, in order to be inclusive, engaging with the whole membership. James, that was a long one, but I feel like there's a lot of stuff that we should unpack there. So what are your thoughts, Jimbo?
Yeah, I mean, there's two elements to this, isn't there? There's the board appointments all being men, which I think is something that is a very warranted point, and something that, in with the mission of the PTO and the progressive stance they put out there, is an important point to raise, and something that I think, yeah, they definitely should be looking at. And I would like to see a mixed and diverse group of people on the PTO board over time. I think it's important in a sport like triathlon, where that it's a broad tent that represents as many different people as possible at the highest level, so that encourages as many people as possible to come into the sport at the sort of amateur level, because you see somebody who's like you doing something, you think, well, I can do it as well, and that's important. Moving on to the long distance representation, this is something I slightly disagree with her point
Okay.
here, because anything above Olympic distance is basically, I think, a good metric in order to be considered a long course race, because it's over the Olympic distance. So you're getting into that long distance, and you know, I don't think those doing iron distance races right now should be set aside from the athletes that are racing middle distance and starting to dip their toe into the long course, because there is a new generation of athletes coming, and those athletes that are winning and competing hard at the middle distance races right now will be, like we just saw with Bloomfield, coming up to the iron distance and dominating. So I think the era of the long course athlete being a separate entity to the short course athlete is over, and you're starting to see those ranks mixed up a little bit. What are your thoughts?
I think I agree with what you said about the board thing. I hadn't even realized it until I read this, and I was like, she like that's true actually. And I was thinking back to all the press releases we see that come out about the latest appointments, and I was like, fucking hell, like again, it maybe made me a bit self conscious, being like, yeah, why didn't I pick up on this myself? Like I'm just
Yeah,
like, oh yeah, didn't even cross my mind, to be honest.
no,
Uh, about what you were saying about the long course thing as well, I tend to agree a little bit. I think, when you think about it, it's not that long course athletes are completely left out. If you look at the rankings, there's plenty of long course specialists who are still in that top 10,
yeah,
the top 10 rankings. What I do find interesting or concerning, if you want to look at it that way, I'm not sure, is we can look at a few things. The PTO Tour, we heard Sam say on the show last week that they're looking to make one of those races 200 kilometers ultimately instead of the 100 kilometers. And then you look at the news last week also that Outside acquired the broadcast rights for 70.3, and we sort of joked about it not being Ironman. That does to me make me go, yeah, maybe there is just a fundamental flaw with that long distance racing, again, from a broadcast point of view. And that's ultimately what the PTO is trying to do, is create a broadcast package for television.
Yeah, but it's supply and demand, isn't it, man? And if we're moving in, 70.3 is a much more popular distance
But that's the point. That's the point,
and
mate,
so,
isn't it?
what you're starting to work towards here is creating a long course package that will work for the audience that's demanding it. And the audience is demanding 70.3, maybe a bit longer, maybe a bit shorter.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the people who only focus on Ironman should be a protective class. I don't know. I
Yeah.
just don't see that as, I think long course racing, I agree. Long course racing is anything over an Olympic distance race. And that should be the bracket. And it should
Okay, 'cause
include Ironman and Iron distance, and it should include 70.3. And I think it should be one big muddy puddle that everyone swims in, and whoever gets to the top gets to the top.
I agree with you, and I hope I haven't come across, because I guess I've actually I'm finding Iron Man increasingly boring to watch, to be honest. Like I like watching
Yeah.
bits and pieces of it, but like then I think about something like, you look at the Collins Cup and the fact that they were calling Joe Skipper a long distance plotter or whatever they called him, and I mean, Joe Skipper's an incredible athlete, but he certainly doesn't have the success at middle distance. Again, I know we're saying it's all one thing, but he doesn't have that same success at 70.3 distance that he does at Ironman. Like that, and again, looking at Jan Frodeno, I think our days of seeing Jan Frodeno racing shorter than Ironman are probably limited or maybe finished. So, yeah, I agree with you. But I think they have to lean into where they're going to make their most impact, and that is, to me, going to be that middle distance. But I still think that some of the things we've heard about, whether it is about rankings based on or points based on position rather than time and stuff, and then they're all worth the same. I mean, I don't know, mate. There's a reason I don't work for the PTO, because I don't have the answers for this. But I think, I mean, Laura Siddle is a very good, she's had a success at long course, probably not the same level of success at middle distance or 70.3. So I can understand why she's making these points, because it's probably personal to her. But I don't think it means it's not. Again, Sam said last week, the PTO are open to hearing things, and they're open to constructive feedback and stuff, and that's what she's done. So we'll see.
Let's get a diverse board at the PTO, though. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, I think that's 100% something that should happen. And I like what she said as well about not just focusing on the top athletes, like actually having mechanisms or ways for those lower tiered athletes, 40 below, bottom 50, to actually have a voice too. I think that's probably something that needs to be important too. I think I've had enough of this. Let's move on to the next thing. Again, this also comes from Triathlon Today from Romy Schoeneveld, and it's not massive. I'm going to go into heaps of it, but it's the fact that Ironman about Kona, several cities have inquired if the Ironman Championships will rotate. Now, he says the move to St. George in May has started serious discussions about whether the World Championships should rotate. We know this is a hot topic. We've given our opinions in the past. I've copped the hate from it. I've copped the people agreeing with me. I love discussion. It's good. But they said if you ask the organisers behind different Ironman events, it should. That's what Ironman said, according to an article on Big Island Now. We've not been urged to keep it keep the race in Utah. However, several other cities from around the world have inquired if the Ironman World Championship will rotate, similar to how the Ironman 70.3 World Championship race does. However, Ironman also mentions that they would much prefer to stick to Kona as their home base. Whether the race would be spread out over 2 days, 1 day for the women's pro race and 1 day for the men's, remains the question. But for now, Ironman would love to return to Hawaii. Kona is a special place, an important part of our history, and it is our intention to continue to make Kona home and return every year. Ironman Senior Vice President for World Championship Events, Dana Birch, commented. Now, the thing I also wanted to, I think there's something to discuss there a little bit, but the other thing as well was earlier this week, Patrick Lang mentioned that the COVID-19 situation on Kona remains worrying due to the few ICU beds that are available. In that regard, he feels certain about St. George taking place next year, but still questions the chances of the Ironman World Championships in Kona being feasible by that time. Jimbo, I know it's the Christmas episode. I know we're meant to get pumped up and excited about this, but what do you think about that?
Oh, I mean, that last bit's depressing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It just brings it all back to here we go again for everything. Anyway, let's try and maintain cheerfulness because, mate, they need to rotate it. They need to have the return to Kona every 5 years, and then within the 4-year period in between, have different races at different places, which rhymed, and I did that on purpose, so that was good. And it would be amazing because then you'd have this sort of homecoming every 5 years where you do it at Kona. If they do keep it in Kona and split it over 2 days, like we and you have said before, for God's sake, don't just have the 2 days racing, then start filling it up again on each day. So it becomes just as chaotic with as many women and as many men racing on each day. Dude, you know my views on this. The listeners know my views on this. It is all about, I think they should rotate and have it return to Kona every 5 years for a special event.
Yeah, I agree with that. But the thing I find, so firstly, there's people now who are starting to make inquiries to Ironman that they're hearing them. So, and they notice it was their intention, not we are, it's their intention to come back. And the fact that they probably getting people going, hey, we'll give you X amount of money to have the race here. And if nothing else, you can always trust Ironman to consider their bottom line. So yeah. I honestly think the other thing to consider is if a certain place was to say, boom, we'll offer you X amount, let's say Dubai goes, here, we'll give you $1 million to put the race on here. Maybe we'll start to see this race shift a little bit. I don't know, mate. There's things to be said. But the Patrick Lang thing.
Yeah, I think we've got to be careful with because we're seeing that a lot in pro cycling at the moment. A lot of money being banded around by races in the Middle East, which can have to be quite boring and quite dull. Now, if Ironman, but at least it does come with an element of
history.
It's Kona history.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm just teasing, you know what I mean? Mate. But don't at me, please. I was just joking.
But I mean, if you're going to rotate it to different places, do it like you do in 70.3, make them interesting, exciting places. Let's not just start selling it to the highest bidder and get boring races.
This one of the things that I've spoken with Chris a lot about, and I've heard Jan say that he's going to aim for St. George and he's going to aim for Kona next year. And me and Chris have spoken about it. Chris doesn't believe it. I'm probably not as convinced as Chris, but I also am like, yeah, maybe I wouldn't be surprised if Jan didn't show up as St. George, just focused on Kona. Do you think if this discussion is starting to happen between the athletes, we're going to start to see maybe people overthinking, I'm going to maybe focus on Kona. I'm not going to worry about St. George. Do you think that we're going to maybe see everybody like legitimately start looking at St. George going, we don't know, like, again, St. George is going to happen. If St. George happened this year, let's make sure we get this St. George race done. And then if Kona happens, great. What do you think about that?
It does throw that conversation into the pile, because, you know, we are currently, it feels like we were making a lot of progress COVID-wise up until about 3 weeks ago. And now it feels like we're going right back to the start. Now, as is always the case, as years go by, it always feels like next October is a long way away until the new year comes. And then it's January, February, March, and we're rolling towards Kona. And so if right in this moment, if the decisions are being, if conversations are being had about whether or not Kona will go ahead, it will obviously trickle into people's racing calendar decisions. And I don't know, it's hard to second guess what Frodeno's going to do, mate, isn't it? Because I don't know,
I want to see him at St. George, mate. I want to see them all at St. George. I want everybody to be at St. George racing like it is the race of the year. There's not some backup chance in Kona later. It's not this, this one doesn't really care. No, I want everybody on that start list hungry to win that race. And I want to see a race. That's what I want, man. That's what I'm hoping
I'd like
for.
to see I mean, if I was writing the script, I'd have them all racing St. George. I'd have Bloomfield win in St. George. Then I'd have Frodeno come back in Kona and take his title, and that would be that. But, you know, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. It's good. It's good, mate. You know, you're talking about the fact that things roll around. I saw a tweet the other day. I think it was today, actually, and it said, can you believe that 2020 was nearly 2 years ago?
Yeah. Fuck me.
Jesus Christ.
It's horrible, isn't it?
It's horrible. What a horrible thought.
I feel like
I saw that. I was like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
That's depressing, isn't it? Jesus
I feel like
Christ.
I've just been stood here for 2 years doing this.
We have. At least we've got different backgrounds now, mate. At least the listeners get to enjoy our lovely view that we've seen for, at least not in the car anymore. And then I noticed that the fact that you did record that episode in the car and we lost the video. So whether people are like questioning whether you actually ever did record in a car, I think. Jimbo, it is time. We have gone through the news. We had a few little bits and pieces about things to be excited for, but I think we'll change that. We'll save that for next year. We'll do a preview episode at the start of next year when we come back after break. But we touched on it at the start of the episode, mate. It is the annual, the prestigious, the biggest event in triathlon. I'm sorry I'm not wearing a tuxedo. It is the MX Endurance Podcast Awards, where we look at the year that was and we give out some of awards for what we think are the highlights, the lowlights, the things we like to talk about, all that jazz. James Bale, how this works is we both ultimately decide who the winner is. And if we can't make a decision, the MX Endurance members who voted are the tiebreaker. That's how we did it in the past.
The ones you've highlighted here aren't the decided ones.
Well, I've got all of them. That's just the one with the highest number of votes. So that means if either of us can't agree.
That's what I mean. So we are making decisions on the fly. These are not already pre-decided. Yes.
Correct.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, we did that last year, didn't we?
We did. I mean, I assume, mate, I know you're studying. I know you've seen the list. I know you've been doing your research, watching clips.
Oh, yeah.
Keeping everything fresh in your mind.
Totally.
But again, it's ultimately, James Bale, we're right. If what we say goes, nobody can argue with us. It's our podcast.
Why aren't we on the list of Triathlon Media Person of the Year? Because I'd like to vote for me.
That, you know, that like dog licking itself sort of thing, that feels a little bit like that, to be honest. Well, let's get right into it then, James Bale, with our first award for 2021 is the Triathlon Media Person of the Year. The nominees are Bob Babbitt from Breakfast with Bob, Mikkel Eden for his YouTube channel, which I've raved a lot about, Brad Colt from Triathlete Magazine, John Levinson, Tri247, Jules Barden, Mana Studios, and our anonymous source for all of our scoops. Jimbo, who do you think are the? Again, we don't have to go straight into it. Let's have a bit of conversation about them. What do we think, etc. Why they got nominated? What do you think? What are the ones that stand out here to you?
Brad Culp stands out to me because of the amount of discussion he manages to create. He's like a fucking clickbait monster. So he loves generating discussion and just throwing out tweets that make people respond. So I think he's quite good for the sport in that sense, because he doesn't take things too seriously and cops a load of shit, throws a tweet out there, knows he's going to
takes it on the chin though. Takes it on the chin. He leads with his chin.
But just loves it. So I always think he's worth a mention. Breakfast with Bob, obviously, Bob's still going, mate. He's still out there, still doing his thing. I love that Michael Eden is on the list because he certainly provides value with his YouTube channel. Am I going to pick a winner from my perspective here?
No, I can have. I want to add a few things.
All right, you add a few bits and pieces, and then I'll tell you who my champion is.
Added. So again, for people playing, what we did is we actually opened up the nominees. We asked the MX members to make their votes or make the nominees, and then the people who had the most nominations got included. Jules Barden we put in there. People maybe outside of MX aren't maybe as aware of Jules, but Jules does all the stuff for Managed Studios, for Phoenix, for Bahrain Endurance. If people saw that Christian Blumenfeld video or documentary, the Vince Louis documentaries, Jules does all of that stuff. So Jules is like he does really, really high quality content in triathlon. Like I said, you probably watched a lot of stuff that Jules has done. You're not even aware of it. So I definitely, that was one I put on there because I thought he deserved it. Our anonymous source for all scoops. I also put that. I think that was one that somebody nominated for us because we have had there's a few of them. Let's be honest. It's not like it's one person telling us everything, but we've had our anonymous source for a few things that has come good for us, mate. There's even things we heard this year that we haven't talked about in the podcast because we've been like, shit, if that actually gets out, that could be really bad. There's something that we found out this year that we still haven't even talked about, and it's been wild. So I also think that was
I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't mean either. Actually, now that I've said it, I'm like, what were we talking about?
Oh, yeah,
what was it? What I can't remember. Anyway, who do you think it is, mate? Who do you think is the triathlon media person of the year this year for you?
Well, I'm going to go with John Levinson because of the relentless work that goes into that website from basically one guy. And they are detailed race analysis that he puts out, and they are detailed race analysis that me and you use a lot for this show. And I think he is his commitment to the cause is unparalleled when it comes to having a triathlon media website, because it's a sport that doesn't have many of those websites, and there aren't many sort of big media companies covering triathlon. So one man leading the way, and so from my perspective, John is that.
Yeah, 100%. John is the one I think gets it too. I think we probably leaned on John more this year for our sources, but like for people, like John makes our job easier. And for people who maybe don't, I always encourage people to go and click on the articles and actually give the guys the clicks and the things that their websites need and like them on social media. But John's articles are so in depth that like we spend probably more time trying to cut them down so we're not just reading for 20 minutes. Like that's the sort of passion that this guy has for the sport, and they're the sort of people that our sport needs. More people like John Levinson, and I think everybody on the list we've mentioned has that passion for the sport. But I think it's John Levinson too, man. I think he does such an exceptional job at that website. It is, for me, the go-to place for race reports, race recaps. I wish he sometimes didn't focus so much on the fucking Brits because fuck you guys. But it's the gold standard for me as far as I'm concerned this year, and I think it's John Levinson. So we agree. Just so people know, Jimbo, the MX community actually voted for our anonymous source for all scoops that came away with 40% of the vote. And to be honest, we had over 100 people who voted in the podcast awards this year. So it's not like 6 people being like this. Our anonymous source got 40%, and then John Levinson got 37%. So those two got the majority of the votes. Michael Eden was in there, I think, with 15% or something. Again, I rounded everything up a little bit. But John Levinson,
trophies
well
in the
done,
post,
mate.
John.
Correct. I mean, I'm expecting to see this all over their website now. Winner of MX Endurance Podcast, Triathlon Media Person of the Year. I expect this. So we'll see what happens, mate. The next one is our most controversial award, and I wanted to get it out of the way because people think we're taking the piss or having a go with this award, and it is genuinely not. This is just meant to be a bit of fun, and I love it, and I'm always going to keep doing it. And that is the Lionel Award for chucking a Lionel. Now, I feel every year we need to explain the origin of this award, James Bell, and what the award actually means. This came about, how we started talking about chucking a Lionel was after Kona, I think 2019, where we saw an interview with Lionel saying that he forgot to drink water, and we were just like, how can you forget to drink water at the hottest race on the planet? And then was like a couple of weeks later, he forgot to charge his battery, his Di2 battery in a 70.3. And we're just like, man, this guy just keeps making these silly mistakes that could easily be prevented. And that's where the term chucking a Lionel came from. So we turned it into an award, and that's what the award is this year, James Bell. The nominees this year for the Lionel Award for chucking a Lionel are Lionel Sanders, just because the award is named after him, so he has to be nominated every year. Jan Frodeno. If you remember back at the very start of this year, James, he nearly missed Challenge Miami because he forgot to get his visa sorted.
He did.
Georgia Taylor Brown for hitting the barricades and crashing at Super League Jersey. Magnus Ditlev for missing part of the run course at was it Challenge Buvda, the Montenegro race.
Yeah.
Andrew Starkowitz for going off course at the Collins Cup when he was coming into transition and he ended up falling back. And Justin Metzler for calling out Joe Skipper at the PTO press conference and then coming last. So of those nominees, which are the ones that stand out to you, mate?
Well, I mean, Lionel Sanders has always got a special place in my heart for this because I feel that he not only is the origin of the award, but he embodies it and he keeps it going. He keeps those flames burning because at least once a year he does something that reminds us of why this award is what it is. Georgia Taylor Brown. Georgia Taylor Brown's, yeah, it was, because I mean, as long as she was all right, so we can laugh at it.
Yeah,
but that was quite an amusing moment, and it's such a low speed fuck up that was. Just looking down at a Garmin or a pedals or whatever, and then straight into the barricade. I don't know. I don't think Ditlev deserves to be on there because he kind of got led off course by bikers. Starkovich, yeah, I'm always happy to put him on an award that won't make him very happy. But yeah, what are your comments before we award a winner?
Well, I have to say a special thank you. Or Jan's definitely favorite because I actually tweeted this at him saying Jan for now chucked a Lionel, and he responded, which tickled me pink. But I remember watching that PTO press conference and hearing Justin Metzler calling out Joe Skipper and thinking, shit, mate, you better back this up because if you don't, you're going to look like a right prick. And he didn't. And he came in well behind Jackson and Joe, which I thought was, again, like, I love it. I think Justin Metz is amazing. I think he's a really good positive force for the sport. And I love that he was like, took a gamble and it backfired so badly. Yeah. So he's my pick, to be honest. The Justin Metzler for calling out Joe Skipper and then coming last, I think was my Lionel Award for chucking a Lionel this year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm going to go down that road as well. I think, yeah. I mean, sometimes you just got to roll the dice, and he rolled the dice, and he came up short.
I actually think, you said, I think Lionel didn't deserve to be on the list this year, to be honest. Like, I thought he to me at least, he had a very, very, we'll talk about that later. But MX Endurance agreed with us. 40% of the vote went to Justin Metzler, and for that exact moment. So there you go. Mate, we got plenty to get through. The next award this year is the Most Outspoken Athlete of the Year. Now, the nominees are Emma Carney. So for people who have been following the podcast, I know she's the Australian retired triathlete who has been raking Triathlon Australia over the coals. She has been on their case big time. Taylor Spivey, because she was very vocal on our show and a lot after not being selected for the Olympics and how that impacted her. Justin Metzler, as we previously mentioned, he's happy to talk a bit of stuff. Joe Skipper, because if you listen to his podcast from Triathlon Mockery, he's not afraid to say what he feels, which I quite like. Mike Kingma got put on this list because of the work or the role she's played in the athletes and to do with the Dutch Triathlon Federation and that sort of stuff. And then Lionel Sanders for that video of him telling Sebastian Kienle to fuck off. What do you think, Jimbo?
Yeah, I think a few names. Obviously, Emma Carney has certainly been making waves in terms of being outspoken. There are people that agree and disagree with what she's doing, and we'll watch that play out because it's far from over. I enjoyed watching Sanders telling Sebi to fuck off because they were having such a heartwarming exchange of videos in that well
So
edited
good.
PTO thing, and then it was just like fuck you.
It was so good. It was
Yeah,
great.
and yeah, Joe's podcast is well worth a listen. So I think that's. But before I give you my winner, I'll let you have a chat around what you think.
I was talking with somebody this week and we're talking about the Emma Carney thing. It was like when she first started, I was there going, I actually think like a lot of what she's saying, I think is really, really good. And then it kept going and kept going and kept going. It's gone to the point where I'm a bit, I don't know about this anymore. It's a bit, my legal brain's a little concerned about some of the stuff. I'm like, is that kind of slander a little bit? I don't know. It's making me a little bit uncomfortable. You said it, Lionel Sanders, that video is still one of my favorite things of it. I loved that so much. I've shared it like on my social media like 4 times. Just the look on his face is so good. And I love, like, that's what I mean. I think the reason that Lionel deserves to be in this list is because he does wear his heart on his sleeve a lot and he does just speak, which is fantastic. The more serious one for me is Taylor Spivey. I think that interview I did with Taylor this year was like properly like very, very raw and real. And that takes a lot of guts. And it's not something we see a lot of the time. So I think she is an absolute worthy contender. But mate, I have to give it to Lionel Sanders just because that was just fantastic. It was so good. And I want to see more of it.
Then I'm going to disagree with you on this one.
Okay.
We're going to have a split decision. And how do we decide split decisions?
The audience decides. The MX members who voted decide.
Okay, well, I'm going to put Maya Kingma as my pick because I think the work she's done with her federation and the way she has, and we know the intricacies and the details behind this, the way she's navigated her way through the last, well, since she was a junior up until now, but in the last 12 months, the way she's navigated that and put herself out there to try and change things for the good within her federation is well worthy of being most outspoken athlete of
there you
the
go,
year.
mate.
Yeah,
English is your first language. It's actually your language.
Swig on this.
Guess what, mate? The audience agreed with me. The MX and Drews members agree with me.
Which is unfortunate.
Lionel Sanders and Emma Carney were actually tied on 35% each. So I win. Lionel Sanders, congratulations. You are this year's most outspoken athlete, even if it is for just one specific moment, which I like. So there you go. James Bell, the next one. This was a landslide, to be honest, and I think we're probably both going to agree with this. But the what the fuck moment of the year. So the nominees are the first one. It's on this list, Jim, but I'm not going to even read because we'll talk about that next year. I've got some stuff to talk about that one. But
have you really? Is it getting removed? Oh, I was looking forward to mocking that a little bit.
We can, right. But I've found out a lot of stuff about it recently, so I want to. Yeah,
and stuff we can actually talk about.
Yeah. Oh, we're gonna do a thing on it. I reckon. I'm pretty interested. Anyway, people are going, "What the hell is it?" Just tell us. The nominees are the boat block in the start of the Olympics, Vincent Louis being taken out by car at Indian Wells 70.3, Alistair Brownlee's disqualification at Leeds WTCS, Jess Learmonth winning 3 out of 4 Super League races but still coming second, and Georgia Taylor Brown's short shoot debacle. James Bell, you've had too many champers, mate, because you're stuttering, you're slurring, you're banging into things. Are you okay, mate?
I'm fine. Obviously, this is quite a funny list, but with some serious implications in there as well. I mean, Vince Louis being taken out by a car at Indian Wells is, that we're lucky to get away with it and could have been a hell of a lot worse.
Correct.
Jess Learmonth winning 3 out of 4 Super League races, coming second. That was, there's been
what the fuck?
Around.
That's literally the definition of this award, isn't it? Being like, what the fuck is it?
Yeah, that was very much how has this happened? But maths will out and all that. For me, the oh god, I wanted to talk about the other one so bad. I had shit to say, but no, carry on. What do you think before I give you my winner?
I think the Georgia Taylor Brown short shoot debacle was one that I was just like, what the hell is happening right now? Like, what is this? This is actually like that again, definition of this award, the WTF. Like that was one that made me go WTF. You make a good point about the Vince Lou one being like genuinely serious and concerned. And again, how does that even happen is the question or comment that I think comes around that one. The one that nobody seems to be talking about that much is the Alistair Brownlee disqualification at Leeds. Like he was exposed. Like that was a bad moment, and he got caught red-handed doing some dodgy stuff. But yeah, it's just like it's come and gone. Nobody talks about it anymore. But for me, mate, it's definitely the boat at the start of the Olympics. Like that was a head scratcher. That was like, how does this actually happen at the biggest race that only happens every 4-5 years? Like that was like, honestly, what the fuck?
Yeah, the Alistair Brownlee DQ, it does seem to have just faded into the distance. A lot of athletes came out from previous generations and now and just said, well, this is just what happens. Like, sometimes it's caught on camera, sometimes it isn't. But a lot of people also said, that's not cool, dude, what you just did. So yeah, that did fade into the distance. But yeah, it's got to be the boat blocking, isn't it? I mean, when they started that race and they were all swimming towards the boat, I was staring at the TV going, that boat's in the way. Why is there a boat in the way? And then the race was halted and restarted. And the interview we did the other day, which we're going to be releasing as the next podcast after this one, over the Christmas period, was with one of the athletes that was swimming towards that boat at breakneck speed. And so
You could say it's not a secret. It's Hayden. We have.
Oh yeah, Haydo. It was with Haydo. I don't know. I wasn't sure whether you wanted to keep it as like a.
We're allowed to say it.
Surprise Christmas Hayden.
We're gonna gift wrap Hayden. He's gonna be under you. You're gonna come down Christmas morning. There's Hayden Wild laid under the Christmas tree with a bronze medal around his neck. Yeah, that was. He was talking about it because he was like right next to him, and he thought he's having the swim of his life because he's swimming. There's no one next to him. He's like, "What the hell's happening?" And he looks. Oh, okay. There's a boat in the way. That's what happened.
So yeah, that's for me. That's the winner, and the audience agreed with us, didn't they?
Yes, over 2/3 of the vote went to the boat. So I think that's the well and truly the winner. I think actually that was also like absolutely the most nominated one. Everyone was just like this: the boat, 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 the boat. This one is one, Jimbo, that I'm very curious to talk about because I thought it was very, very clear cut, and I don't think it is anymore, especially after what we've spoken about with the PTO stuff recently. But it is the most improved athlete of the year. And how I've looked at it, because that was something we discussed, was literally who has improved this year the most from start of the year to the end of the year. The nominees are Ruth Astle, Alex Yee, Lionel Sanders, Magnus Ditlev, Rasmus Svenningsson, Maya Kingma, Lucy Charles Barkley, and Taylor Knibb. Jimbo, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few standout names here, aren't there? It's a strange one because I think if we're talking over a 12-month period of improvement, someone like Lionel Sanders has had a stellar year in comparison to his previous years. Whether he has improved within this 12-month period to the degree that would win in this award, I don't know. But I think he's had a year unlike any year I've seen from that man. And he is worthy of a different discussion, I think, further down in the podcast than this one. I think Lucy Charles Barkley I would put in a similar bracket, in that sort of...
Think about her at Miami, mate, though. Think about that challenge at Miami, mate, where Jodie Stimson did a number on her on the run.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But then, all right, then I'll put Taylor Knibb in that category as well, as opposed to... but Alex Yee, I think, has had a tremendous year as well.
Yeah.
Quite how much going through the gears he's done, I don't know. But it's... what are your thoughts on this one?
See, I thought what we've spoken about, like, I think my choice is still probably Magnus Ditlev, but looking at a few of them, and because I also thought Lionel Sand, like I put Lionel on this list because I've talked nonstop about it this year. He has impressed me so much about the evolution of him as an athlete. Like we're seeing the smart choices that he's making. He's done things that we've gone, what the fuck is he doing? And then it's like, oh no, it worked really well for him. Like I really feel like he has improved a lot. But putting that criteria of this year makes me probably go not so much because he's always been a great athlete and he's still a great athlete. So, but it's not that he hasn't improved. I think it's just there's other people who have probably improved more. Lucy Charles is one that I have really considered because, again, always been a great athlete. But is it that case that because she's always second and that this year she finally got that first, does that are we sort of clouding it? I think because, again, Lucy Charles is an incredible athlete. Her run split is probably the most improved. But is she the most improved this year? I'm not sure. Alex Yee, I mean, Taylor Knibb, I don't actually consider her that improved this year because Taylor Knibb started this year winning Yokohama, and then she's won a bunch of races, and she's stayed up for me the whole time. Like I've never really like Taylor Nibb has exploded onto the scene, and like she's an under 23 world champion. Like she's a great athlete, and she's remained great. Uh, Alex Yee goes from barely being on the Olympic team to gold and silver medal, Super League win. Like I could not believe the what was it, the performers of the year this year, and people had Alex out of the first. I couldn't believe it was a travesty. Like it was actually like, what the hell is happening? That should have been a WTF moment of the year, to be honest. But I have to give it to Magnus, mate. It has to be Magnus Ditlev to me, because we saw him at even let's go back 12 months to Challenge Daytona last year, where he was the fastest biker and he fell to pieces on the run. And then he went to Challenge Miami and he fell to pieces on the run. And then he went and he just kept working at it until suddenly that run was like, I think we said it a lot on the podcast 12 months ago. We really hope that he doesn't become that Uber biker who can't run. And he has beaten people like that Portugal race where he held off Ali Brownlee and Casper Stornes, two pretty good runners. Like he did that on the run, and we saw him at like was it Daytona this year again. He didn't manage to beat Christian, but he still kept off everybody else. Like I think his improvement this year has been astronomical, and yeah, that's why I picked Magnus.
I agree. Magnus Ditlev is my choice because he was having a stuttery year, and then he made a last minute decision to do that block of 3 races where he just got podium win. And I think that was a real defining moment, and could be a defining moment in his career, where he's gone, you know what, I'm not done yet for this year. I'm going to go and do this. And it was a huge pick me up for him. So I think, yeah, Magnus Ditlev, mate. Trophies in the post, old boy.
Yeah, he actually, and again, members voted. Magnus got 30% of the vote. That was actually quite close. Magnus 30%, Alex Yee 27%, Taylor Nibb 23%. So that was a very, very close category. But yeah, congratulations, Magnus. There you go. Jimbo, this next one, this is the one I'm excited to talk about, and that is the racing moment of the year. The nominees are Holly Lawrence and Ellie Salthouse in the swim at the Collins Cup, Alex Yee versus Johnny Brownlee sprint finish at Super League Jersey, Hayden Wild helping Christian Blumenfeld after the Olympic race, Sam Long versus Lionel Sanders, St. George 70.3, Heather Jackson's Ironman Florida win, and Vincent Louis' second place after being hit by a car. Take it away, Jimbo.
There's a clear winner for me here, mate.
Yeah.
It was one of the greatest finishes of a race I have ever seen, and that would be the Yee Brownlee sprint finish at Super League Jersey.
See, I love the fact that as you, because I know what your choice is as well, but I love that as you were saying, it's one of the best finishes. I was like, you could apply that to the Sam Lionel 70.3 win. Like,
yeah, you could. You could.
I also think to the Holly Lawrence Ellie Salthouse swim, that was a moment. That was a real moment, and I still think that if when Holly went down at the Collins Cup, if Ellie had been like, that's calm as a bitch, that could have been something. Yeah. The other one that we spoke to Hayden a lot about, but I neglected to talk about post Olympics was that Hayden Wild sportsmanship moment helping Christian at the finish line in Tokyo. I think is another. It's not necessarily an exciting racing moment, but to me it was a real moment, like that real sportsmanship moment, almost as much as watching Flora Duffy cheering for Katie Zafiras winning her or getting her bronze medal. Like that again, just a moment that really stood out to me this year. But it's 100% the Yee versus Brownlee sprint finish at Jersey. That is right up there. In fact, it probably is the best finish I've seen in a triathlon. I used to always say it was the Lisa Norden, Nicholas Spirig 2012 Olympics. This one, I think, tops it, mate. This was the most excited I've ever been watching the end of a race. Like, I was losing my mind.
Yeah, because it wasn't just the end, was it? I mean, the whole context of the race, the way they'd put watching Vince Louis crack, it reminded me of Indurain in '96. It was the whole context behind it, and how they'd sort of taken it in turns to batter Louis until he broke and was off the back, and then it was Hayden off the front, Yee and Brownlee catching him, passing him. Hayden couldn't hold the wheel, and the next thing you know, there's a huge sprint finish down the line, and it was really quite impressive. I was like you, I was going mental.
Yeah, that's racing moment of the year, I think. MX Endurance agree with us. That had 35% of the vote. So the close one was also, second place was Hayden Wild. So Hayden Wild got 25% of the vote there. Yeah, really, really great. There's so many good moments this year, mate, to be honest. Like, again, I think we're quite spoiled this year in a lot of ways. We're nearly done, mate. We've only got a few to go. Well, there's a few. This one, however, actually, I'm going to come back to that one because that's a big one. We've talked about race moment of the year. Actually, this is the same. We'll do it anyway. We'll go through this one quickly. Most exciting moment of the year: Tri Battle, Lionel Sanders versus Sam Long, announcement of sub 7, Yee versus Brownlee sprint finish, the Collins Cup, Ironman California before it was cancelled, and the Collins Cup press conference. To me, it's the Brownlee.
Did we not just do this? Is this not the same one? Yee Brownlee sprint finish.
Racing moment and exciting moment. So they're similar. It's this. Right. That's why I'm like, let's just go through it quickly. It's Yee Brownlee.
Sprint finish again.
Yeah. Let's move on. Here's one, mate. Okay. So we've got the awards we have left: a race of the year, performance of the year, female and male triathlete of the year. What order do you want to go in them, mate? Do you want to go?
I would say performance, then race, and then we do the male and female.
Okay. Performance of the year. The nominees are Jan Frodeno from the Tri Battle, Christian Blumenfeld Men's Olympics race, Gustav Eden 70.3 World Championships, Lucy Charles Barkley 70.3 World Championships, Lionel Sanders the Collins Cup, Taylor Knibb the Collins Cup, Christian Blumenfeld Ironman Cozumel, Flora Duffy the Women's Olympic race, Sarah Svensk Ironman Cozumel, Jodie Stimson Challenge Miami, Alex Yee the Mixed Team Relay, and Vincent Louis Indian Wells 70.3. Jimbo, what do you think is the performance of the year? Or what do you think about these performances? Which are the standouts for you?
Yeah, there's a few on here that sing to me, mate. Taylor Knibb at the Collins Cup is something that I will forever enjoy, because I told a few people in the audience before they started that day, Tim Hemming included, that Taylor Knibb was going to do what she did, and he belittled me for having that opinion.
I noticed that he wasn't Triathlon Media Person of the Year, Tim.
That's why, Tim. You weren't even on the list, bro.
We love you, Tim Hemming.
Lionel Sanders at the Collins Cup is another one.
Yep.
Flora Duffy at the Olympics, obviously, an emotional watch. Lucy Charles Barkley at her 70.3 World Championships. What an amazing race that was from her. Yep. Leaving some of the best athletes in the sport standing. Now, for me, performance of the year here, I've almost got a hybrid of this, because the performance of the year for me is Christian Blumenfeld winning the Olympics, then going to Cozumel and doing what he did. That's kind of like it comes as one thing, because it's the thing that differentiates Duffy from Blumenfeld. I know that Flora went on to win the Xterra, but what
and WTCS.
And WTCF. What Christian did at Cozumel was astounding, and so I think Blumenfeld with the Olympic gold medal going to Cozumel is my performance of the year.
You have to pick one. Come on, you can't sit on the pick. What is it? Is it his Cozumel race or is it his Olympic race?
Then it's Cozumel, because it came second.
Okay.
It was the second race.
That's all right. Firstly, I actually didn't think that Jan Frodeno's tri-battle performance, and again, this speaks to the quality of racing this year, that Jan broke the Ironman world record, and to me, I don't think it deserved to be on the performance of the year. I've had a lot of discussions with people online around that performance, because I still think Jan Frodeno should have been on this list, but I think his Collins Cup race is his best performance of this year, because he left it all out there to get that fastest split. And you consider he still went faster than Gustav Eden and a lot of very, very fast middle distance guys. Shows the absolute class of Jan Frodeno. And I think we'd heard he wasn't even feeling that good before the event. Like, he's not that good at this distance anymore or whatever. To me, it's not on the list, so I can't even consider it. I think Gustav Eden 70.3.
Didn't you write the list? Didn't you write the list?
No, I didn't. The MX members nominated them.
They chip them in, do they? All right, fine.
Yeah. I think Lucy Charles Barkley's 70.3 World Championship performance is one of the best things I saw this year. When you consider she did it all off the front, literally from the start of the swim, she led all day, and then she was the fastest in all three splits. Like, that is just understanding that she did that all solo, pushing herself with no one around her, nobody to pace her, nobody to take a turn, nothing, just her doing it like a time trial, basically, makes that performance so impressive to me. Flora Duffy, the Olympics, mate, like, what a performance. What a performance. Oh, man, there's so many. Yeah, Taylor Knibb. Lionel Sanders Collins Cup was absolutely an incredible performance, considering he'd done like 1,000 Ironmen in the lead up to this race, and then still crashed. He crashed. Remember, he fell off the bike, and God, it was good. I'm going to disagree with you though, mate. While I think Christian's Olympics and everything was great. Like, sorry, I think it's his Olympic race. So you've said it's Cozumel. I've said it's the Olympics. I think that Olympic performance from Christian Blumenfeld was incredible. And the reason I think that that is my performance of the year is that I think we touched on this. Or I don't know if we've spoken about it. He saw that opportunity to win the gold, and he gave it everything. He did not leave a ounce out there. He gave every single thing he had to win that race because it's the biggest race in the sport. And to take, like, again, the guts, the risk that he took to go when he did, like, the whole thing, to me, to then pull it off, makes it my performance of the year. And then when you look at it in the frame of everything, yes, it absolutely adds to it. But watching him win the Olympics, I think that was the performance of the year for me.
You can preach all you want, but you're wrong. So the MX audience says so.
They do. You're absolutely correct. I got outvoted here. In first place, the audience voted for Christian Blumenfeld, Ironman Cozumel, and then a very close second was Lucy Charles Barkley with 70.3 World Championships. Interestingly, both Christian and Flora both got 15% each for their races, which I found very fascinating. That, like, even I'm surprised you picked Cozumel over the Olympics. I genuinely thought you were going to pick the Olympics. Like, I thought we were going to agree on this one. So it's good that you didn't.
And don't get me wrong, we couldn't watch Cozumel, and I really enjoyed watching the Olympics. And it was amazing. I think it's an amazing performance. And Cozumel, if it was the only thing he'd done this year, would not be winning my Performance of the Year award. It was within the context of the entire year that he'd had, and how impressed I was, and how just blown away I was to see a short course athlete who was the Olympic gold medalist go and do what he did. It was just the culmination of everything, really.
What about Gustav's performance? You didn't consider it much, or?
Yeah, Gustav did well, mate. Yeah,
mate, they all did, didn't they? That list, it's like there's a reason they're all nominated for Performance of the Year. Hey, like, just all incredible performances. Okay, third last category, mate. Race of the Year. The nominees are the Olympic men's race, the Olympic women's race, Super League Triathlon Jersey, 70.3 Worlds, the Collins Cup, the Olympic Mixed Team Relay, WTCS Leeds, St. George 70.3, Clash Daytona, Challenge Miami, and the Tri Battle. Jimbo, give us your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few races that we've enjoyed watching this year. There's been a lot of stuff that we didn't get to watch. The Tri Battle is just not. It shouldn't
got zero votes. List. I should say it got zero votes. Like, I actually put it. I don't normally. I only put the top ones, and then I put next to the Tri Battle 0 because I thought that was quite funny. Nobody voted for it.
Super League Jersey will always have a special place in my heart, especially this year. It was an amazing finish. St. George 70.3, again, an amazing finish. WTCS Leeds, what a race that was on the men's and the women's side. But I think settling in to watch that Olympic men's race, the Olympic women's race was amazing, and Flora Duffy's performance was absolutely astounding. But the men's race came down to a finer margin at the end, and watching Blumenfeld explode off the front, I think that's going to be my winner for this one.
Interesting. I can completely understand exactly what you're saying. Some races that I think, worth a mention. That WTCS Leeds race was really exciting, but probably for us, maybe a bit because Maya, like, that was really great. And then obviously seeing that Alexi performance was fantastic. St. George 70.3, that Lionel Sam thing was fantastic as well. The Olympics were great. The women's race, Flora, was incredible. Men's race, incredible. But I'm going to give it to the Olympic Mixed Team Relay, mate. I'm going to go with that one as my pick because I just thought it was this exciting new format. We saw the decimation of some of the people. Like, where are these guys? We saw that battle between Vince Louis and Alex Yee, and then the fact that Johnny Brownlee got the gold to be, complete the set. Like, the whole thing, mate. It was just such an experience for me. And I think, that's probably that's the race I'll remember the most this year. I think, like, when I'm laying in bed thinking about triathlon as I do every night, that's the race that comes to my mind the most often.
Watching Vince ride up to Yee and not go past him was pretty astounding. Watching Yee hold on for that was cool. Yeah. So what do we do here? Because we've got equal percentages from.
I was about to say we have a conundrum because the Olympic men's race and the Olympic mixed team relay.
Toss a coin?
I think we have to give it as a tie, mate. Or the alternative is we just give it to the Olympics.
Yeah, okay. Just the Olympics in general. For existing, managing to do what they did in a COVID year.
That's the other thing as well, that like, again, you think about that. Like, I think all three Olympic races were some of the best races I saw this year. So I think that's the reasonable way, because for people playing along at home, the Olympic mixed team really got 23%. The men's race got 23%. The women's race got 10%. So I think that's if you total that up, what's that, 20, 40, it's over 50% of the vote went to the Olympic events. So it's our rules, mate. It's our show. We do what we want. It's the Olympics. There you go. Congratulations, Olympics. Here we are, mate. We only two left.
Are we gonna do male or female triathlete of the year?
We'll see. I think we'll do male first, because the males was a landslide. Actually, they were both landslides. Maybe we'll just do them together. Do you want to just, we can go through both of them. We can have a discussion around both of them and announce them at the same time. Why don't we do that?
Yeah, cool.
Okay, so the male triathlete of the year nominees are Christian Blumenfeld, Jan Frodeno, Gustav Eden, Lionel Sanders, Hayden Wild, Alex Yee, and Johnny Brownlee. The women's nominees are Georgia Taylor Brown, Flora Duffy, Jess Lemont, Lucy Charles Barkley, Taylor Knibb, and Katie Safires. To me, this is pretty easy, if I'm honest. Like, this was not a difficult decision for me to make. What about you?
No, it wasn't for me either. I am surprised you didn't struggle on the women's side, because I thought you had a different athlete in mind for your women's triathlete of the year award.
You don't know who I thought? Maybe I thought it's...
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, for me, the men's side was fairly simple.
Yep.
The women's side took a bit of thought, but I think we've had some stellar performances across the year. Watching Lucy Charles Barkley do what she did this year was quite amazing. We've had some brilliant racing at the Super League races, brilliant racing at WTCS races, but Flora Duffy, without question, for me, the Olympic gold medalist and going and winning an Xterra title is just head and shoulders above the rest.
Interesting. So you said who was it for the men? Sorry.
Oh, for the men, Blumenfeld, clearly.
Bloomfield,
yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So you've gone Flora Duffy and Christian Blumenfeld. That's fascinating. Interesting. Did you see that the PTO at the moment are doing a similar thing for performance of the year, performer of the year? Yeah. And it was in the semifinals. It was Christian versus Lucy Charles, and it was Gustav versus Flora.
Yeah.
And Christian was absolutely wiping the floor with Lucy, and Gustav was beating Flora Duffy. And I could not believe it. I could not believe that people are saying that a 70.3 world title and a fast Ironman is better than an Olympic gold medal, a WTCS, the first person in history to do them both in the same year, an Xterra world title, plus every other race that she won. The women's female triathlete of the year for me is 100% Flora Duffy. Like, I'll be honest, it wasn't... Lucy Charles was somebody that I've been thinking a lot this year about, because she's just... The thing I've really liked about Lucy, yes, she has had some great performances, but it's that attitude of just trying things, just doing a Super League race, just going to do the Olympic trials, going to do WTCS, doing 70.3 worlds, an incredible performance. Like, that's the thing for me. It's been great. But I still think about that Challenge Miami race where she looked a bit, she didn't have that run. Whereas I can't fault Flora Duffy this year, mate. Even when she hasn't won, she's still been right up there. Like, it's Flora Duffy for me. She's the female triathlete of the year, and Christian Blumenfeld, 100%. Like, that's not even a close discussion for me. I still think his season is possibly the best season we've ever seen ever. He got 85% of the vote. 85% of people voted for Christian Blumenfeld. 77% of people voted for Flora Duffy. I messaged Christian saw I put up a story saying, like, I'm actually embarrassed that people are voting for Gustav over Flora, and I put it, and Christian replied to me. He's like, "Come on, mate, Gustav's great." And I was like, "Christian, as I'm sure you do, I'm sure you remind Gustav, Olympic gold and WTCS title is better than a 70.3 title." And he said, "Yes, I remind him like I did this morning," and I love it because he's incredible. So that's it, mate. So congratulations, Flora Duffy, Christian Blumenfeld.
Congratulations
everyone.
To all our winners. Well done. And all the runners up and those competing. What a year.
What a year, mate. Honestly, that's the thing. Compared to last year was a bit like tough because there wasn't a whole heap to talk about.
Yeah.
This year, some of these were really, really hard for me. And I've loved it. I loved that it was hard. I love that we've had so much to discuss. And just doing this today has reminded me of so many great moments that I enjoyed. So, mate, there you go. They're the podcasts. We'll put up a thing. People can check it out. We'll probably get some graphics done or something. I don't know. Anyway, but congratulations, everybody. Again, trophies in the mail. I'm hoping that you got your sponsors to include a bonus for winning the MX Podcast Awards. So that should be substantial for all of you. I'm assuming the PTO this probably counts towards PTO points as well. Probably they're going to get some bonus points for winning MX awards, I would assume. We'll talk to Sam and the team over at the PTO. But Jimbo, speaking of the PTO, what's next?
Welcome to the down low on the PTO. Yeah, man, so it's the end of the year, isn't it? And the rankings have been totted up, and Gustav Eden.
Gustav, old chap.
Gustav Eden and Lucy Charles Barkley reign supreme as Professional Triathletes Organisation announces PTO World Rankings 2 million year-end bonus. So Iden's victory in Florida early this year in his first long-distance race scored him 107.23 PTO World Ranking points and was the second highest score for a full-distance race in 2021. Combined with all his other points, this gave Eden an average of 109.62 PTO ranking points and the PTO number one title. So in addition to scooping his $100,000 of the $2 million PTO World Rankings bonus pool, combined with his PTO championships with Daytona and his earnings at the Collins Cup, this means the Norwegian earned $280,000 in prize money from the PTO. Charles Barkley has the highest single race points total this year, scoring 123.98 PTO World Ranking points at the 70.3 World Championships, where she'd taken the fastest swim, bike, and run by a healthy margin. Charles Barkley already had 101.76 points in the bank from a strong race at the Collins Cup, and combined with all the others meant that she had an average of 107.645 points for the year. So she earned a fair amount of money too. So, yeah, man, we're starting to see that, we're starting to see the PTO ranking system in action, and coming to the end of the year, we're seeing these athletes actually taking home their bonuses and their financial, scoops for their achievements this year. So congratulations! It's good to see. It's good to see it happening.
Do you think that the number one male and number one female won this year?
It's an interesting topic, isn't it? Because
goes back to what we were saying earlier.
It does. It goes back to what we said earlier. The PTO aren't taking into account Olympic gold medals. That's not what they're there for.
What's long course? I guess we have to frame it. Let me rephrase it. Did the best long course athletes win the number one ranking this year?
When you've got, I don't know. It's strange. I think because the way the ranking system works is you collect points for doing race, and then you average it out. When you haven't done that many long course races, but you come and do an absolutely stunning performance in a one-off race, then that's not how ranking systems works. That's not how this ranking system works. So, but if you ask me whether at this moment in time, the single best male long course athlete won the number one spot, then I would say no. Because I think when Christian, I'll just call him Gustav then, and Christian and Gustav line up
combine them two. What do we Christav or
we'd have. I think Christian would take him. Did the number one women's long course athlete win? Then yes, I think so.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about it. You can only judge them based on what they've done this year. And I mean, Christian did have that mechanical at 70.3 world, so he didn't get anywhere near the points that he needed to keep that average up. Jan Frodeno just didn't really do the races. Like, he had that incredible Collins Cup race, he had the tri battle, but then it was Challenge Miami, which he was good. He didn't look like he really dug deep. And when you consider that these awards are based on, or these points are based on how fast you go, the fact that he was sort of jogging along talking to the commentator on the bike, I was like, okay. But then he had the Gran Canaria challenge race, which I don't think is a very fast course because it's very, very hilly. So that's the thing. I guess I could get, all sorts of things coming to it, courses, blah, blah. I don't want to talk. I'm sick of this year talking about the nuances of the ranking system, but
yeah. So, but I mean, ultimately, it's good to see them taking home a lot of money. It's good to see that it pays deep. And congratulations to all the athletes this year that have earned their money by giving us such amazing performances to watch.
Let me ask you this then, before we move up and wrap up for the year. Have you enjoyed having the ranking system to talk about this year? Has it been something that you've enjoyed discussing on the podcast?
It is. It is. Ultimately, it's a benefit. It brings something to triathlon. Does it need tweaking? Of course it does. Does it need ironing out? Of course it does. Do things need to get better and become more understandable by the audience that are trying to understand it? Yeah. You need to. It needs to. We need to not create circumstances where someone can win a race and get less and get more points. Sorry, get less points than someone who came second because of a time tweak in a different race. So yeah, I think it brings a benefit to the sport though overall.
Almost like we need to work out a way where somebody can win 3 out of 4 races but still finish a series second.
Yeah, indeed.
I know they're
So,
working on it too.
have you enjoyed the ranking system, old boy?
Yes and no. I've gotten a little bit worn out about that because you can't help but keep coming back to the same things, and it's like I'm a bit sick of that aspect. I love the fact that we have the rankings. I loved it when we saw Jan get knocked off, and it was like, what the fuck? Like, what's happened? Like, I love that part about it. I mean, people probably we like to talk about things on this podcast around the sport, so that it's definitely given us something to discuss. Yeah, I think as Sam said, they know it's not perfect. They're going to work on things, so I think it's only going to get better, mate. But I like that we have this thing that we can refer to. And I would encourage you, as I said before, guys, head to the stats page, head to the rankings page on the PTO and geek out, become absolute mega nerds like we are, because it's a really good resource to have. James Bale, you know what? If people have enjoyed listening to the podcast this year, now is the best time to jump on to mxendurance.com/podcast, where you can sign up for one of our podcast memberships. It's a new year. Sign up for one of our annual memberships and you'll get all of the past bonus episodes we've done, plus all of next year's bonus episodes that we're going to do. It's going to be a lot better next year because we should actually be able to travel to some races, hopefully. It's a great way to support us. If you've enjoyed what we've done this year, if you want to keep us going, make it better, head to mxendurance.com/podcast. You get bonus monthly shows that we do record with Chris, access to our member discounts, like we said, with Mortan, which we've just announced as our partner, plus a whole suite of other ones. There's a whole bunch of other stuff, including our community. You can ask questions, whatever, contribute to the podcast, all that good stuff. mxendurance.com/podcast, just in case you've forgotten it. James Bale, if they want to find out other things about MX Endurance, where do they need to go?
If you want to find out more about MX Endurance, head to mxendurance.com or search MX Endurance on Facebook or at MX Endurance on Twitter or Instagram. If you want to follow me, I'm at bale.james85 on Instagram, or you can follow Tim at T414 on Instagram. Jump onto iTunes, give the show a review. You can do it in the podcast app, and it really helps the show out. If you like what we're doing, tell a friend, help us grow the podcast. If you've got any suggestions, comments, or criticism, send an email to podcast@mxendurance.com.
You're right there, mate?
Yeah, man. All good. Yourself?
Yeah, good. You did well.
Well,
You've done well, James Bale.
We've done all right, haven't we?
We've made it to the finish line. 2021.
What a year.
We're done.
A few weeks off.
What a year, mate. What a year.
Have a good
weeks
Christmas,
off.
everybody.
Bit of housekeeping. So how it's going to work for you guys playing along at home. We are going to take 3 weeks off recording the podcast from this week, but we have banked an episode we've recorded with Hayden last week, so that will come out. We're not sure yet when we were debating it before we hit record whether we're going to put it out next week and then have 2-week break, or take a 2-week break and then make that the first episode back. We're not sure yet, but we will start recording again the middle of January. So that basically there's going to be another episode after this one at some point, but in the future, there's going to be 2 weeks without the podcast. That's just because we're taking a couple of weeks off because we're sick of each other doing this every week. I'm just sick of the look of him. I don't want to look at him anymore. Making this a video podcast. Welcome to my nightmare. In all seriousness, James Bell, thank you very much for this year, mate. It's a pleasure to do this podcast with you. I like that we can just literally have the same conversations we have offline in
Online,
podcast format.
Indeed.
It's
very
good.
Fun. It's been fun,
And,
mate. Have a good Christmas.
Yeah, thank you to everybody for listening this year too. Like, we wouldn't be doing this if you guys didn't listen, and we've really seen the audience grow a lot this year. We've seen a whole bunch of people come in and take advantage of that MX Endurance podcast membership. We really appreciate it. All the messages we get, even the bad ones, we read them all. We take it all on board. We try to make the show better. And thank you guys for another great year. We'll be back next year, hopefully bigger and better, to keep making the MX Endurance podcast. Until then, James Bell, a pleasure as always. Merry Christmas. See you in the new year.
Merry Christmas, mate. Cheerio.